Huh. I don't get it.
One day, I went to a part of town I don't usually visit to do some shopping, and I happened to see my husband and my mom walking arm in arm, looking all lovey-dovey, kissing each other in public like they didn't care who was watching. Shocked, I ran over to confront them, but instead of being ashamed, they just turned defensive. I ended up going straight to my parents' house and told my dad about the two of them, leading to my divorce. After my dad passed away, I had to see my mom and ex-husband again. When I saw my mom for the first time in a while, she was wearing loose clothes, and her belly was clearly bigger than before. Noticing my gaze, she smiled like she had won something.
Oh, you noticed? I've got a baby in here. I guess no matter how long you waited, you couldn't have one, huh?
Unlike you, she got pregnant right away. Now I finally get to be a dad. I'm glad I left you.
They threw the most hurtful insults at me they could think of. However, their efforts completely missed the mark. Unfortunately for them, I didn't feel a thing.
Wow, you guys are ridiculous. You're both a joke.
I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. My name is Megan, and I'm 24 years old, working as an office worker. My parents had me when they were very young. It was what you'd call a shotgun wedding. Both of my parents were pretty wild when they were young. My mom, Rachel, was still in high school, only 16 years old, when she met my dad, Bob, who was 4 years older and working construction. That's how I came to be. As for how they got together, my mom fell in love with my dad at first sight and pursued him relentlessly, and he eventually gave in. Before long, she got pregnant with me, and they got married. People around them were strongly against the idea of high schooler getting married, but since my mom was already pregnant, they had no choice but to accept it. At first, my parents' young marriage seemed to go well. When I was in kindergarten, my dad often picked me up on days when it rained and his job was canceled.
Megan, your dad is so young and handsome.
Right? He's so sweet, I love him.
I loved walking home under the same umbrella with him, telling him all about my day. However, something happened to my dad, and from that moment on, my mom's attitude toward him changed drastically. My dad accidentally fell while dismantling scaffolding and suffered a severe injury. When his body became impaired due to severe bruises and multiple fractures, my mom's attitude turned cold, like flipping a switch. Fortunately, his life wasn't in danger, but he was left with lasting injuries, and he could no longer continue working in construction. Thanks to physical therapy, he was able to walk again, and through a friend's connection, he managed to get a new job at a company. However, he still needed long-term therapy even after being discharged from the hospital. Despite this, my mom acted as if it had nothing to do with her and refused to help him with hospital visits or daily assistance. Even when my dad fell in the hallway and couldn't move, she deliberately ignored him or threw sarcastic remarks at him.
Falling down on purpose to get attention. How pathetic. Marrying this dead weight was a mistake. I should have looked at more men before getting hitched.
My mom would constantly complain about my dad like this, almost as if it were her mantra. It appeared to me that she was bullying him, and frankly, I did not have a favorable opinion of her. Because my dad had to cut back on work for his medical visits, we weren't exactly a wealthy family. Since my mom worked nights, I spent most of my days with my dad, and I became more attached to him than to her. Whether my mom noticed or just wasn't fond of kids from the beginning, she only did the bare minimum for me, and I was mostly neglected by her. Though she at least let me finish high school, after I graduated, she told me I had to work to help with the household finances, so I didn't go to college and instead got a job at a small local company.
I'm sorry, Megan. I'm such a burden on you because of my condition.
Don't say that. I'm happy to work if it helps you, even just a little.
When I decided to work instead of going to college, my dad smiled apologetically. Even though I hated following my mom's orders, I worked hard for my dad's sake. Years passed after I started working, and once I got used to my job, I married Miles, a colleague at my workplace. Unlike my parents, who had a cold marriage, I wanted to build a warm home with him.
I'll always take care of you, Megan. Let's be happy together. And I want lots of kids.
His words made me happy, and I accepted his proposal without hesitation. However, a year after our marriage, we still didn't have any children. I wanted kids too, but no matter how long I waited, there were no signs of pregnancy. As I grew more depressed, Miles started pressuring me like it was all my fault.
Why can't we have kids? All my colleges already have kids. It's probably your body that's messed up. You're a real disappointment as a wife.
Please don't say that. It's not just my problem. I want you to come with me to the gynecologist and get tested too.
What? Why should I have to do something that annoying? I've never even had a cold. I'm perfectly healthy. If we can't have kids, it's definitely your fault.
No matter how much I suggested fertility treatment, he wouldn't listen. Instead, he started blaming me more, saying it was my fault that we couldn't have children.
Stop making excuses and go get treated at the hospital. Being married and not having kids is humiliating for me.
He completely ignored my words and kept blaming me one-sidedly. Still, I clung to a small hope and continued trying to conceive alone, but there was no sign of me getting pregnant. Eventually, Miles started coming home less and less. He often stayed out all night, claiming he was busy with work.
Is he really working? Could he be cheating on me? Come to think of it, there were those times.
I had several reasons to suspect him. There were times when he came home in the morning, and his clothes smelled like a woman's perfume. Not just once, but several times. On top of that, when I checked his credit card statements, there were regular charges for things I couldn't explain, further fueling my suspicions. I figured confronting him directly would just lead to him dodging my questions, so I waited for the right time to bring it up, and that opportunity came sooner than expected. One day, I went to a part of town I don't usually visit to do some shopping. I happened to see Miles, who had told me he had to work that day.
Is that Miles? But he's supposed to be at work today.
I was about to call out to him when I noticed a woman walking beside him.
Wait, why is Mom walking with Miles?
My mom was happily walking next to him with a big smile on her face. Since I got married, I had been keeping some distance from my mom. I'd visit my dad at my parents' house, but I rarely brought Miles with me. As far as I knew, Miles and my mom hadn't spoken since our wedding. I found it strange, so I didn't say anything and just watched them. To my shock, they held hands affectionately, and right in front of me, they kissed without any regard for who might see.
What? I don't get it.
I couldn't help but yell. The two of them didn't notice me and just kept walking. Finally, I shouted at them.
Hey, Miles! Mom! What are you doing?
I couldn't take it anymore and ran after them, calling out. They both looked genuinely surprised when they saw me.
Oh, Megan, what's the matter? Why are you so flustered?
What do you mean? What's the matter? What are you two doing together?
What? We just ran into each other by chance, and I was saying hello since it's been a while. What's wrong with that?
It seemed like my mom was going to play dumb. She looked much younger than her age, and if someone didn't know, they'd never guess she was in her 40s. As I got closer to her, I noticed something.
This smell. I've smelled it before.
The perfume my mom was wearing was familiar. It was the same scent that clung to Miles' clothes when he came home late. As much as I didn't want to believe it, I realized my mom was the woman he had been cheating on me with.
Don't lie to me. I saw you two kissing just now.
What? You're mistaken. We just ran into each other.
When I pressed them, they exchanged a nervous glance for a split second. After a long silence, Miles finally gave up and spoke.
I didn't think we'd get caught this soon. What are you even doing here?
What's that supposed to mean?
You're so slow. I thought I could keep fooling you for a little longer, but I didn't expect to get caught. Well, it's just as you guessed. I've always preferred older women.
Sorry, Megan. I did feel bad about it. But from the first time I met Miles, he was exactly my type.
My mom and Miles both acted shamelessly, saying things I couldn't believe.
We just happened to run into each other one day, and while we were chatting over some coffee, well, things just clicked between us. I'm still young, you know? I still want to experience romance.
I wasn't happy with you anyway, and as I talked to your mom, I started getting more and more drawn to her.
Oh, and I heard from Miles, Megan. You've been having trouble conceiving, right? He really wants a son, but thanks to you, he can't. Poor guy.
You told her that.
Well, it's the truth, isn't it? Your body's broken, and that's why we can't have kids.
To my disbelief, Miles had told my mom all of our private marital issues. He hadn't listened to me when I was struggling with infertility, but he was acting like the victim, blaming me for everything then. Anger boiled up inside me, and I realized there was no way I could stay married to this man.
You're the worst. Do you even realize what you two are doing?
I shouted at the two of them, who were casually making excuses.
It's your fault. You're a failure as a wife and a woman, and that's why this happened.
What? A husband like you is the last thing I need. I don't want you anymore. Let's get divorced.
Fine by me. Honestly, I've been tired of you for a long time. You're full of excuses, you can't have kids, and the thought of being rid of you makes me feel great.
Oh dear, I didn't mean for this to happen. But I guess I've ended up taking your precious husband, haven't I? Sorry about that.
My mom offered a fake apology, clearly not feeling bad at all.
Mom, if I tell Dad about your affair, he'll divorce you too. You'd better be prepared.
Her expression shifted for a moment, but then she quickly regained her composure.
Well, there's no proof of our affair. You and Miles can get divorced if you want, but I'll divorce your dad when I'm good and ready, so stay out of it. Come on, Miles, let's go.
My mom urged Miles, and the two of them walked away quickly, leaving me behind. Even though they were clearly in an affair, unlike Miles, my mom didn't seem eager to divorce my dad right away. I immediately went to my parents' house and told my dad about what had happened between my mom and Miles.
I see. I endured for years because I thought even someone like her was still your mother. But to treat my daughter like this, I can't believe it.
Hearing my story, he looked like he was swallowing down a bitter pill.
I'm going to divorce Miles. After what he did, I can't stay married to him. What about you, Dad? What will you do about Mom?
Don't worry. I've got a plan. I'm not going to let them get away with this.
After that, Miles sent me divorce papers already signed by him, and I signed them. Our divorce was finalized. My mom never returned to our family home, and I heard she and Miles had run away together. Though it made me furious, my dad told me to forget about the two of them, so I decided to move on from both my ex-husband and my mom. I moved out of the apartment I'd lived in with Miles and returned to my parents' house. By then, my dad had regained much of his mobility and was able to take care of himself. Ironically, it seemed that the fact my mom never helped him had worked in his favor.
Even though things turned out this way, I'm glad we can live together again, Megan. Thanks for coming home.
I spent some peaceful days with my dad, but that peace didn't last long. He caught pneumonia, which had been spreading at the time, and suddenly his life was hanging by a thread.
Megan, I'm so sorry for all the sacrifices you've had to make. From now on, live your life however you want.
In his final moments, with his mind fading, he grabbed my hand tightly and said those words to me. I nodded through tears at his words. Despite the treatment, his condition suddenly took a turn for the worse, and he passed away.
Dad, I can't believe you're gone so suddenly. I wish I had done more to show you how much I cared.
Even as I mourned, I kept moving forward, preparing for the funeral. That's when two unexpected visitors showed up at my house.
Long time no see. So, the old man's dead, huh?
It was my mom, and standing next to her was my ex-husband, Miles. With twisted smiles, they brazenly walked into the house.
What do you think you're doing? Get out.
Come on, who do you think you are? I was his wife, you know. It's only natural for a wife to come when her husband dies.
How can you even say that after running off and being out of touch for years?
Yeah, say whatever you want. But no matter how much you yell, I'm still his wife. Which means I have a right to a share of the inheritance. And don't forget about the insurance either.
Unbelievable. So that's why you never divorced, Dad.
After my dad retired from construction due to his injury, he worked steadily at his new job, eventually earning a higher position just before he passed. Although he lacked a college degree, his determination, sharpened through his experience as a craftsman, garnered the respect of his team members.
There was a good reason not to divorce. Now, let's talk about how we're splitting the estate. I know he wasn't a materialistic guy, so he must have saved up a lot. Come on, let's go over it.
As my mom pressed me about the inheritance, I suddenly noticed something. She, dressed in loose-fitting clothes, had a clearly bigger belly than before. She noticed my gaze and smiled triumphantly.
Oh, you figured it out? Yes, I'm pregnant with Miles' child. I guess no matter how long you waited, you couldn't have one. I'll give birth to one for you.
Unlike you, she got pregnant right away. Now I finally get to be a dad. I'm so glad I left you.
They hurled the cruelest words they could at me. Their efforts fell flat. Unfortunately for them, I felt nothing.
Wow, this is hilarious. You two are such idiots.
I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. They looked at me, confused.
What's so funny?
It's just ridiculous. Hey, I hate to bring this up, but are you sure that baby's really Miles?
Miles appeared annoyed and replied with a what, while my mom suddenly seemed uneasy. Her eyes darted around, and she seemed visibly shaken. However, Miles didn't seem to notice.
Of course it's mine. Don't try to make yourself feel better by saying stuff like that.
Yeah, stop with the sour grapes.
Well, we'll see about that.
I stepped away and returned with a document I had kept, holding it up in front of them.
What are you doing? What's this?
What's with the surprise? It's probably nothing. Wait, what? What is this?
They both stared in shock at the contents of the document. It was a report from a private investigator detailing my mom's relationships. After my mom and Miles ran off, I had spotted her in town one day. However, walking beside her wasn't Miles, it was a young man I didn't recognize. I followed them discreetly and watched as they entered a hotel together.
What's going on? Is my mom?
I had talked to my dad before he passed, and we decided to investigate my mom's behavior. I thought it might come in handy someday. The investigation confirmed my suspicions. My mom was involved with another man, not Miles. Miles, in disbelief, frantically read through the report, which detailed my mom's relationship with her lover. The report detailed everything about my mom and her lover. When Miles finished reading it, he turned and glared sharply at my mom.
What is the meaning of this report? Were you deceiving me all along?
There's no way that's true. Megan is lying. The baby is definitely yours.
My mom, flustered, still insisted that the child she was carrying was Miles.
Who are you going to believe, me or her?
Yeah, that's right. She's just trying to trap you because she couldn't have kids. What a terrible woman.
Miles, convinced by my mom's words, regained his composure. He dismissed the report as a lie and began to blame me, completely ignoring their own wrongdoings.
You don't have to believe me, but unfortunately for you, I have definitive proof. Come on out.
I called toward the room next to the living room, and the door opened as a man walked in.
What? Who's that guy?
Who? I don't know him either.
Both of them looked puzzled, trying to figure out who the man was.
This is Todd. It makes sense you wouldn't know, but I got remarried.
His name is Todd. I met him a year after my divorce from Miles through a mutual friend, and we got married.
What does this guy have to do with anything?
Well, unlike my mom, you can't tell by looking yet, but I'm also pregnant. And of course, the baby is his.
So what? Spit it out already.
Don't you get it? When I was married to you, no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't have a baby. But after marrying Todd, I got pregnant right away.
Miles' eyes widened in realization.
You didn't bother going to the doctor because you thought it was too much trouble, but I did, and I found out that there's nothing wrong with my ability to get pregnant. So, the problem wasn't me, it was you.
No way. That's impossible.
But here's the strange thing. Mom got pregnant even though it's supposed to be hard for you to have children. Are you sure that baby is yours?
When I posed the question, Miles couldn't respond and instead glared at my mom.
Hey, tell me the truth.
Fine, I'll admit it. I lost.
Oh, that was fast. I thought you'd try to hide it for longer.
Why bother?
Hey, what do you mean by that?
I was only with you because you were Megan's husband. You know how people always want what belongs to someone else. But my real guy is the other one. I was planning to break up with you sooner or later.
Miles was shocked, standing there in disbelief at my mom's confession.
I wanted to have my fun with different men until I got caught, but I guess my fun was interrupted. Oh well. No matter whose child I'm carrying, it doesn't change my right to Bob's inheritance.
Are you still talking about that? Sorry, but you can give up on that now.
What? How many times do I have to tell you? I'm still legally married to your dad, so I'm entitled to his estate.
No, you're not. You see, you and Dad's divorce was finalized a long time ago.
What? That can't be.
Maybe you've forgotten since it's been so long, but Dad kept the divorce papers you had already signed.
When I told my dad about my mom's affair, he had quietly pulled out a divorce decree that had already been filled out by her. According to my dad, during a huge fight when he could no longer work due to his injury, my mom had thrown a signed divorce decree at him, saying,
I don't need a husband who can't move.
In the end, he didn't file it because of me, and he kept it. But before he passed, he had used that divorce decree to officially end their marriage.
So, Mom, you won't be getting a single penny of Dad's estate. I hope you understand that now.
No.
The confidence that had been on her face just moments ago disappeared as my mom turned pale. Miles was still glaring at her.
I'm leaving.
Realizing her affair had been exposed to Miles and that she wasn't getting any inheritance, she fled the house in a hurry. Later, my mom gave birth to a healthy baby boy, but it didn't take a DNA test to confirm his blood type alone made it clear that the baby wasn't Miles. Miles seemed disgusted and said,
I never thought she'd turn out to be such a tramp.
and abandoned my mom. Then, he disappeared without a trace after learning he wouldn't get any of my dad's inheritance. As for my mom's real lover, it seemed their relationship had always been just a fling. Upon discovering her pregnancy, he also fled, leaving her to face it alone. In the end, at 40 years old, my mom became a single mother, raising a young child with no one to rely on. She's now dependent on public welfare, raising the son of the man who abandoned her. Because she had the baby later in life, taking care of him seems to have drained her, and I've heard she's aged a lot. I once saw her from a distance with her child in tow, and looked more like a grandmother than a mother with more gray hair than ever. On the other hand, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and now I live happily with my family of 3. When I think about it, the son my mom had is technically my little brother, and my daughter and he are the same age, which is quite a complicated situation. On his Memorial Day, I plan to cook my dad's favorite meal and enjoy it with a family of 3. The betrayal of my ex-husband and my mom was painful, but because of it, I gained an irreplaceable family.
He's surely watching over us from heaven.
I'm sure my dad would be overjoyed by the birth of his granddaughter. With the love he gave me in my heart, I vowed to continue living in harmony with my family from now on.